Oh, yeah. I love that. Welcome back to the Justin Thurber Show. I am your host, Justin Thurber, and as always, my co-host extraordinaire, Jim Davison. How we doing today, Jim?
Doing good. Thanks for having me. I'm all dressed up because I'm heading to a forum for planning board later on today.
Awesome. Well, good luck with that. It's like the League of Women Voters or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So all the candidates in town will be doing a debate on for the upcoming election.
All right, make us proud. Hey, so we're gonna change some things up going forward. We're always trying to do better on the show, and we want to deliver a better product to everybody out there that's listening or watching. So what we're gonna do is today we're gonna get some housekeeping taken care of, and we're gonna update you on some stories we have had covered in the past. So Jim, can you give us an update on the Mass GOP, the caucuses, the fundraising, and all the other stuff?
Yeah, for sure. So everyone that's been watching has known that the Mass GOP is currently filling vacant state committee seats right now, and tomorrow is going to be another caucus for the state committee seat, and this one is going to be the Plymouth and Norfolk district, and it's going to be tomorrow actually at 6:30 p.m. And for those unfamiliar with the district, it's going to include the towns Weymouth, Hingham, Cohasset, Norwell, Scituate, Marshfield, Duxbury, and Hull.
Just a
So again,
couple.
this is to replace one of the 80 state committee members. I think the existing member had transition to something else. So where this seat will be to fill that position. So there's a strong grassroots candidate running, Joe Bronski.
Nice.
So we're going to keep an eye out on him and see how he does in that election tomorrow.
And what about the fundraising? I know there's been some confusion I've seen recently about the numbers for what Amy Carnevale and the GOP said they raised as opposed to the numbers that you have found through OCPF.
Yeah, so one of the highlights that we've been paying attention to over the last chair election and kind of this tug of war that's happening within the Mass GOP, one of the primary issues within the Mass GOP has been around fundraising. So after the new chair was elected, that was kind of the main focus, was that she was going to bring in a bunch of fundraising into the Mass GOP. So like you said, we want to kind of hold people accountable and make sure if that's what they're running on, that's what they're doing.
Yep.
And so I just thought it would be interesting to compare what the fundraising has been in Q1 of this year compared to the Q1s of years prior.
Yeah.
And pretty much what I found, these are the numbers right here. So in 2020, the Mass GOP raised 190K. In 2021, that went up to 203K. And in 2022, that went up to 213K. And then in 2023, the Mass GOP raised a total of $38,000.
Yeah.
So
Well,
clearly a big drop off from some of the former, the prior years. So I think, I don't know, we'll kind of wait and see how the fundraising comes in and see if
sure.
it improves from here. But that was just one thing that I had noticed, is that was a central issue of the last chair election. And
Well, I think everyone wants them to be successful so they can get it out to the candidates who need the money. It's just one of those things you say. I think a lot of people on the periphery, on the outside of things, look at it, and will sit there and be like, "Hey, listen, this is super easy. I can do it really easy." And then they get in the seat and realize it's not everything they thought it was going to be. So, hopefully those numbers go up, and but if not, well, I'm sure we'll keep we'll keep on it. Um,
some people were calling the report not true as well. So I'd like to challenge anyone that says that. So I mean,
yeah,
I ran the numbers myself. I found them right from the OCPF website. If you go up and you look at I think it's committee contributions and individual contributions are
yep.
the two categories. So anyone can find that information. And so I challenge those that say that it's not true to, let's kind of explore that a little bit more, because
Nice.
I don't know. There's a few people spreading that rumor where I don't know what that's based out of.
Well, we'll keep everyone posted on that. I'm sure a lot of people that listen might not think that, hey, Massachusetts GOP and fundraising means anything to them, but they say all politics is local, but all politics is also national. And one thing I keep telling people is, I really think Republican donors are starting to change their habits, and they're starting to say we're going to fund candidates, not the party. And I think what's happening is to punish the party for not doing what they want the party to do. Unlike the Democratic Party that usually bands together, and I said I give them credit for that. They circle the wagons when they have to. We don't do that, and we hold people to account. So if you're not doing what the people want, the people aren't going to support us. So, hopefully we can all come together, change, and have a meeting of the minds or something like that, and just be able to, fundraise and win elections going forward. So,
Yeah,
all right, enough about that.
I agree. The goal is to be on one team at the end of the day.
Yeah. So the other thing we want to let everyone know is Easthampton, where the school board voted to not hire, to rescind their offer to that superintendent because he said the word ladies. They upheld that decision, and they're going to go with an interim superintendent as they search probably far and wide for someone that doesn't use the word ladies and will call people folks or y'alls or something dumb like that. So I'm just hoping somewhere out there some sanity prevails and that the community comes together and be like, can we just hire competent people and listen? Maybe you think they say something wrong, but can we be adults and just keep going forward? So we'll keep people posted on that story that we had in I think 2 weeks ago. We had that story. So if you haven't heard that story, go on our YouTube, go on our podcast, search. It's absolutely crazy. So the other thing, Jim, in the news is another bank collapse. Funny we haven't heard about too many of those lately, but now it seems like it's starting to pick up steam again. What do you think?
Yeah, that's one of the topics we covered in a prior segment. And like we said in the segment, that as much as the government was trying to say this is one and done, they stepped in and saved everything. We were pretty much saying that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. This is a much deeper problem than is being let on. And sure enough, we've, the banking crisis has never stopped. It's still continuing. And then now we're just seeing it continue even further with the collapse of First Republic Bank over the weekend. Essentially, the FDIC has said that they're pretty much trying to find a bidder, and they're stepping in to sell its assets essentially. So there's I think we'll still see more to come on this. This is just another domino to fall, and we'll stay tuned in the coming months for any other news on this.
Sure, and if, like I said, if people want to go back and look at some of our old episodes on SVB and the banking crisis and where we think it's going, a lot of information out there. And as this story develops, because I'm sure it's going to develop because there's a lot of things going on in the market. You and I talked during the week about these things. I think we'll be talking more about banks and stock markets and recessions, unfortunately, in what we do to get out of there. I'm usually not a big government type of person. We've discussed this, Jim, ad nauseum, but when I used to take economics class and they talked about recessions and depressions, and they said, who is better at getting people out of there, the government or people spending? Well, I think the mentality for most people in a recession or depression is to save. So unfortunately, during those times, I think the only one that actually can get you out or get you out quicker is probably the government by spending. But again, that's something in the future that we can talk about. I hope you and I are wrong. I hope we're not heading that direction. But hey, keep watching, stay informed. So a lot of kind of downer news on some things, but we actually have some good news because I know last week you and I both participated in some Earth Day events because it was Earth Day last Saturday, and we have some pictures up. Unfortunately, people listening on Spotify, you probably have to go to YouTube to see the pictures, but tell me about your group and what they did, and then I'll give a little bit about what we did in Dayton.
Yeah, I'll just start with the high level stuff. So this was a great event for RTC to be a part of because a lot of times in politics, especially in Massachusetts, Republicans get that stereotype that, oh, they don't care about the environment, or like they don't care. And we've talked about the energy transition and some of the issues going on, how actually the energy transition in Mass is actually causing us to burn more fossil fuels. And I mean, we already have 3 times the electric rates and all this other stuff. But anyways, so the Earth Day was really kind of a good way to change that narrative in our local community, in our town specifically. And so RTC, credit to our RTC for organizing this. We have an events committee that looks for different events in town, and they identified this as like a great opportunity to get involved with the community, and it really was. We had a team of about 15 people from our RTC and friends of our RTC and their families, and it was just a good day overall. We got out. We the town does their own Earth Day initiative, so they supplied trash bags, and yeah, we all met up at a spot that we felt like needed a little bit of cleaning in town, and we were able to find all sorts of trash. I think in total we might have gotten like, I don't know, close to 40 trash bags worth of trash. So definitely a very successful event. And the thing was, it was posted all around social media in our town as well. So that was really cool to see it on like some of these town websites where I don't even think the Democrat town committee did got anyone together for Earth Day. So I think it really just was like a great event overall.
That's something I want to hit on, because it's always funny because, you know, the media or people paint us as people that don't care about the environment, and it's really not that we don't care about the environment. I've always been taught since a young age to be a good steward, right? I think a lot of religious people believe, hey, you take care of Earth, God created the Earth, take care of the Earth if you're religious, right? Or leave the world a better place than you found it. That's things they always taught us. I think what happens is a lot of times they confuse that with, you know, climate alarmism, or, you know, all this climate stuff they want to talk about. And, you know, I think most conservatives, Republicans would love to have a discussion on that, because, you know, whether we believe it all or we trust the science or whatever, I think there's room for discussion in how we attack the problem. I don't think taxing is going to fix the problem. But what I do think is going to fix the problem is people getting out and doing things, living a life that helps the environment. So, well, here's one thing you guys did. You handed out seeds to attract. I thought this was a great idea. You handed out seeds to attract, was it bees or, you know, insects or whatever, and to help them out. That's a great idea, right? But the other thing too is, look at this trash, right? My sons and I, we had tire hubs. We had the front bumper of a vehicle. It's under those bags. We had all these bags, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, you know, the people that do this, like, I don't do this. I'm sure you don't do it. I think there's a lot of people that care about the environment and don't do this. And then there's a lot of people that just don't care. And I don't mind teaching people to care about the community they live in. The country, the environment, like, we can teach that, right? But I think where we differ is like how much government involvement, how much money should be taken out of our pocket to do things that may or may not solve the problem and work. Just one quick story too. I remember I was in Spain in the military, and there was a woman working at the base from Spain, and she was cleaning out her car, and her car was an absolute mess, disgusting. And I'm like, what is this? And because she was a smoker and stuff like that. And she was telling me, she's like, listen, I love my country. She's like, I'd much rather keep my car a mess, keep everything here and clean it instead of litter. And I'm like, that's such a simple idea and something we can do, right? And a lot of this stuff, you know, baby diapers, bottles, we found diapers. I mean, just all this stuff in there. You're like, my goodness, people, like, can we just be good stewards of the land? And I think what we need to do, and I hope more RTCs, and I hope just more people come together every year, not just every year, it shouldn't be one day, it should be all the time, but the basic simple things that we should do as individuals is, hey, don't litter, you know, clean up after yourself. And just think about it. I want to leave a better world for my kids than when I came in. And if we all had that mentality, I think it would go a long way. And a lot of this perceived division between, you know, conservatives and, you know, Democrats or liberals, it would actually kind of go away. And we see, hey, we all want the same thing. Just how does that look and how do we get there?
Yeah, and I think it's great. Anyone that's part of an RTC or anyone that's leadership of an RTC should definitely look at doing this in 2024 too,
Yes.
because it's just a great way not only to bond with the individuals on your RTC, because we're all busy, so we meet for the RTC, but it's usually business when we're
Yes.
when we're meeting for the RTCs. So this was a great way to have like a fun event, really connect with people outside of their families and people outside of the RTC as well. So just a great way to connect with a lot of people, and then also recruit too, because as we were getting out there, we were talking to people, and
Yeah.
people that might be hiding in the woodwork or might not want to be associated with a stigma that being involved with an RTC would have. All of a sudden it's like this kind of erases that stigma too. So I think it's just a great overall event for for the community, for the RTCs, just to connect with families. It's a win-win overall for everyone.
Yeah. All right. So as I said earlier, that we're always trying to do new things on the Justin Thurber Show, just to get you a lot of information. Sometimes we go real in depth with stories, and I know a lot of people, have to listen to them for a while, and sometimes like I have to listen to it on my car ride, then get home and listen to it a little bit more. And there's just so much news that goes on. In you and I discussed that what we'd like to do is hit on some of those newsworthy items, but try doing them in like a 3 to 5 minute segment, just in case you missed it. So our new segment is going to be called "In Case You Missed It," and what we'll either do is we'll have videos, or we'll have articles, or websites that you can see of things that are going on in the news that affects us all. Some of it will be national. Most of these this week are national, but they're subjects that are going to hit home. And some of them eventually will be local, but let's get into the first one. The first one is, I couldn't believe when I saw it this week, that because it was the Air Force, and you and I were both in the Air Force, and they had the 4-star general in front of Congress, basically saying he was at the full committee hearing in the Department of the Air Force for the fiscal year 2024 budget, and they were discussing how some recruits in the academy came up with a slide about how you can't say mom and dad, and how it's some sort of offense thing. So let's watch this video really quick. We'll discuss it really quick, and then we'll get on to the next.
General Brown, I do have to ask you a question that sort of stems from what Ms. McLean was asking about. She showed you this curriculum from the Air Force Academy, and she asked you why the terms mom.
Okay, really quick. I know I stop a lot. Sorry, people. Really listen to what this general says, because he's trying to make this seem like it's a leadership thing. And he says it a couple times. And then later they talk to the Secretary of the Air Force, and he basically throws the general under the bus and disqualifies everything this general said. And when we're done, we'll talk about it really quick, and then we got to move on, because like I said, I want these to be quick. But just listen to what this general says.
And you said that you're working to build cohesive teams. So just wondering, how do the terms mom and dad impair cohesive team building?
Part of leadership is understanding the people you're privileged to lead. And as you have that opportunity, you get to know them. And every one of us grows up differently and has different experiences, different backgrounds. And we can't assume when we engage with them. And so from that perspective, you've got to to build that team and to build that trust with our airmen, and in part because that trust is part of the cohesion that gives you the strong team to be able to go execute what the nation asks us to do.
I understand better than most that families at times aren't defined by blood or even paperwork, and I know you have to recruit folks from different family environments into the Air Force. But do you think maybe it puts downward pressure on recruiting some of the people who do have moms and dads and do use the term mom and dad, if in the curriculum of the academy it seems to disfavor those terms?
No, I don't.
And what's your basis for that belief?
Because I think part of leadership is dignity and respect of those who are privileged to lead.
You don't think it disrespects people?
I do not.
You don't think it disrespects moms and dads when they send their young children, I guess, becoming adults, into the academy, and then they see that mom and dad are disfavored terms? Do you agree that mom and dad should be disfavored terms?
I think we need to respect the fact that they have either parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles that sometimes raised young people.
Sure, but I mean, I know folks who've been raised by aunts and uncles, and none of them have ever told me that when they hear someone else call their parent mom or dad, that upsets them. Do you know of people who feel excluded when others refer to their parents as mom or dad?
I don't, or either way, whether it's aunts, uncles, moms, and dads, I have not come across anyone.
If I could,
Sure.
The point of that slide, I'm familiar with it, came out of the Air Force Academy. It was actually created by cadets for training, and it's not very artful. But the point was that you shouldn't, it was not to diminish moms and dads. It was to just make people aware of that particular family configuration, not the.
I don't know, Mr. Secretary. It says that you want to use parents, caregivers, or guardians instead of mom and dad. So when you say instead of, it kind of does seem to disfavor it. And I appreciate not every slide is perfect. And if you're saying this isn't artful and we're not going to try to disfavor mom or dad or make people feel bad, I think that would be progress to hear.
You're correct. It wasn't
Okay,
artful.
great.
I don't think they're using that slide anymore.
And one thing the chairman and I certainly would not take exception with is that you seem to favor the term y'all. So no objection there.
So much to say to that video, right? Like, so if you listen to that general really quick, like I said, we're gonna go through these really quick. He's like, you can't assume, and to have strong teams, you have to build and everyone get to know anybody. But if anyone was ever in the military, and you know, some other stuff came out about the having trouble recruiting people, is the military had this saying, service before self. I love that saying. I think a lot of people in the military love that saying, because what that meant is when you put the uniform on, you didn't care about what the other person thought, believed, background, nothing. You were a brotherhood or sisterhood. You work together and fight together to finish a job. Now what they're doing is they're like, well, you can't say this, and you come from a different family from this, and you're creating division in an organization that there should be no division. And the answer isn't, well, leadership calls. No, leadership calls for you to sit there and tell people, listen, we have a job to do. Put your differences aside. Who cares if he has a mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandparent that raised them? Who cares? The job is the job. And if you struggle as a cadet in the Air Force Academy because someone says, I have a mom and you had an aunt growing up, maybe you're in the wrong business.
It's a solution without a problem, but the result of it is it's causing more problems. And like you said, the number one issue that the military is having problems with right now is recruitment. And obviously the COVID vaccines are a big part of that. And now the military, to a lot of folks that I've talked to, has been almost been regarded as like a joke when these things come up. It reminds me of when my college got rid of the word ombudsman because they felt ombudsman was offensive, but the word ombudsman has nothing to do with a gender identity. No. And it's just like who is really not succeeding in life because of the word ombudsman. It's an absolute joke, and it's people that were on the fence about joining the military or not, I think, are going to have a clear decision after seeing a clip like that.
Yeah. Well, so like I said, we're trying to move quick. So the next one I found was absolutely hilarious. And we've discussed in previous videos how politicians love to change words or come at things differently to make it seem like they're not doing what they're doing. And, you know, so I think this was just really, really typical of politicians. When I saw it, I laughed. I hope you guys, well, don't laugh because it's actually pretty serious what they're doing. But we just need to start identifying and calling politicians out when they start changing words, changing definitions, and being dumb. I don't want to say the S word, but they're being dumb. But let's watch this, and I can discuss it really quick. Watch my hands, too, because I'm going to do some funny things. I'm going to beat.
Thank you. There are new provisions in the House now for members to get reimbursements for rent and utilities and meals and things. We understand how tough it is to pass a pay raise here, but is there a concern that some in the public might interpret this as a pay raise? Are members getting something extra on top of this, and is that politically a problem?
No.
Why not?
It's a reimbursement.
But talk about that. Shouldn't people perceive that as an issue? I know that was something you argued for back in December.
The effort to make sure that members are reimbursed for housing expenses has been bipartisan in nature from the very beginning. It's a bipartisan recommendation from the House Modernization Committee. There was then a bipartisan unanimous vote taken by the House Administration Committee in late December of 2022. There was a bipartisan process working with the nonpartisan CAO to develop procedures for the reimbursement mechanism to be appropriately implemented. And then another bipartisan unanimous vote was taken at the end of March.
Okay. So here's the deal. There should be like a new rule, right? If you're a politician is going to be doing this on a big scale, we should probably not elect those people. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the stupid thing about this is they asked him, they were sitting there saying, hey, listen, would you consider that a pay raise, that you're getting benefits? And he's like, no. And well, why isn't it considered a pay raise? They're getting their rent paid for. They're getting these fees paid for. They're getting all this other stuff paid for that wasn't getting paid for. It's not a pay raise because it was bipartisan. But if you look at my hand and I do this, just trust me, it's bipartisan. So it's not a pay raise. We got to get rid of these people. It's like they're playing politics, and you see it all the time. That would be a disqualifier right there. Be your damn self. Sorry, be yourself.
Yeah, I've done a lot of planning and budgeting for different organizations, and one of the first thing that we always look at if we ever have to scale back is looking at the total compensation that we're paying folks. So, for example, as a sales employee, usually, at this particular company, there was a cell phone bill attached to that. There was travel, there was meals, there was a car reimbursement because they had to travel for their job. So it's like all these things were part of their total pay. And if really going into the COVID lockdowns, we were at a place where we're like, well, all right, we have to start trimming some of our costs because of this event that's happening, and we're going to lose business because of it. And that's one of the first things we looked at is like, okay, how can we look at total pay? So to say that it's not total pay is just like a complete
real simple. I might go to my job and be like, I don't need a raise, but I need you to pay my rent, pay my car payment, pay my insurance, and all my meals. But I don't need a raise. These guys are crazy. They're out of their mind. So as we move on for that insanity, another thing that happened this week is the HHS secretary, HHS whistleblower, went in front of Congress to talk about how the U.S. government is working as a middleman in a massive child trafficking operation. This blew my mind. I think they try sweeping this under the rug because, we have all this immigration issues that need to be fixed. And while everyone's sitting here and like, no one's illegal or no one's undocumented, there are actually kids and people suffering. So this is kind of upsetting, but just listen to what this woman says. It's unsettling, to say the least.
My goal is to inspire action to safeguard the lives of migrant children, including the staggering 85,000 that are missing. Today, children will work overnight shifts at slaughterhouses, factories, restaurants to pay their debts to smugglers and traffickers. Today, children will be sold for sex. Today, children will call a hotline to report they are being abused, neglected, and trafficked, and we don't know if they're going to get the help they need. I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in home country, smuggling to the U.S. border, and ends when ORR delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. Some sponsors view children as commodities and assets to be used for earning income. This is why we are witnessing an explosion of labor trafficking. Now, whether it's intentional or not, it could be argued that the United States government has become the middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation that is run by bad actors seeking to profit off of the lives of children. There is a Pandemic Analytics Center of Excellence, or the PACE as we call it. I believe if data analysts at the PACE could look at the data, children could be rescued, criminals could be prosecuted if the PACE had access to this data. It shows where the children are and who has them. We need to revamp the vetting process of sponsors and have case managers who have investigative backgrounds, data analytics backgrounds, some certified fraud examiners. And I think we need to reimagine a system where the sponsor is the accountable party. Sponsors should be required to report to ORR. And lastly, stop retaliating against whistleblowers. Stop retaliating against the people who are trying to tell the truth to save the children. As it is written, a wise man listens to advice, while a fool continues in his folly, and HHS needs to be wise to care for these children.
Yeah, so there's a lot in that video, and like I said, this just blew my mind. 85,000 missing children. We allow criminals to be sponsors. If you're a whistleblower, they attack you. I mean, it almost makes it seem like there's an actual reason behind this, right? It makes it seem like, hey, listen, people really don't care about these kids. People don't really care. We're like, hey, we're doing great things for these, people, letting them come to America. Yeah, they're working in slaughterhouses. They're being sold for sex. They're probably being killed, or they're being, hey, you have to pay your debt, so you have to work here free. One of the other things, I watched this video a little bit longer because, for time, I had to cut some things out. But I guess there's some kids that are coming that speak like a Mayan dialect. And because it's a certain dialect, like they don't understand Spanish too well, and obviously they don't understand English. So these kids are ripe because they have no way to communicate with anybody what's going on. And the only thing this lady's saying, the only thing you have to do is don't give them to criminals. Give the government access to some things that say, hey, listen, these people you don't give it to, these are how we're tracking these kids, this is what's going on, and we could fix a lot of these issues. And instead, don't be a whistleblower. It kind of almost seems like there's a reason this is going on. And I hate to say it that way or whatever, but this needs to be fixed. Plain and simple. These are freaking kids. Like all these people that care, all these people that go down the border, get to a chain link fence and have a picture taken of them crying because kids are in cages and there was no cages there. Now there's actually kids missing, and where are these people? Where are they?
Yeah, it's very sad. It's something that you would traditionally associate with like third world countries, and it reminds me a lot. So a great book out there. It's called "In Order to Live" by Yeonmi Park, and this was the book about this girl who grew up in North Korea, and at the time they were human trafficking North Korean girls into China because of the one-child policy. A lot of families don't really either kill the girls, or there's not as many because they want the boy to carry the family name and whatnot. So there's a shortage of girls in China, so they would import a lot of children from North Korea. And she documents her her whole story and how pretty much throughout the whole process everyone was taking a cut of her journey in there, and luckily she was able to escape into South Korea. Now she's in the US. But yeah, it's very sad. It almost, as you were talking about that article, it kind of reminded me of like prohibition in a way, where like the government banned the sale of alcohol, but they were still very much involved with the transportation, the distribution of alcohol, where they were kind of the middleman, and they would be the ones that would kind of look the other way, or like, as long as you were kind of giving them payments on the back end, they would they would allow you to continue your operation. So except instead of alcohol, we're talking about human lives.
Yeah, human lives, all for money. It's crazy. So one last thing we'll do is again, hopefully some of these things get people thinking, maybe get people in a call to action, or maybe just tell people, watch this show or go out and learn more about this stuff, because we need to be educated. Too many of us, and myself included, up until a couple of years ago, you're just living your life. But I think when COVID hit and you start seeing a lot of things, you realize there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the United States, and that needs to be taken care of. So the next thing we're moving on to, and a final thing in case you missed it, this week the House Education Committee held a hearing about school choice. I found it to be a very informative discussion, and this was one of the best parts from it. So
can you just talk about a little bit about that from the eyes of the most important, and that is the student?
Yes, thank you, Congresswoman, for reorienting us to the student question at hand today, because it is all about students, and we do not want students trapped in unaccountable public schools. But if we look at Catholic schools in particular during the pandemic, you're absolutely right. Private schools were much more likely to reopen much quicker than the district schools, largely because teachers' unions kept those district schools closed. If we look at Catholic schools, they opened much quicker as soon as they knew it was safe to reopen, when the science showed that it was safe to reopen schools, and the result has been pretty phenomenal. There was a piece by Kathleen Porter McGee in the Wall Street Journal recently, and she found that if all Catholic schools, all 1.6 million children in Catholic schools were a state, they would outperform every other state on the NAEP in math and reading. And so they gained, low-income kids in particular, minority students in Catholic schools gained 10 points in reading over the course of the pandemic, when students across the country actually lost 3 points in reading and 8 points in math. I mean, this is a phenomenal story to tell about how Catholic schools thrived.
Well, Dr. Burke, let's not let the facts get in the way of good story over here. So, Mr. Messer, can you talk more about what the polls tell us about support for school of choice across the country in my last minute remaining?
Yeah, I mean, overwhelmingly, we live in an America today where we agree on almost nothing, right? But we all agree on school choice. Poll after poll, 90%, 80%, 70% of Americans support school choice. Here's three simple concepts. One, no child in America should be forced to go to a failing or unsafe school, and every parent should be able to move their child if their kid's in that kind of school. 80% support across America. It's not fair that only wealthy parents get to choose where their child goes to school. 80% support all across America. Schools should focus on the basics, not pushing a political agenda. Parents should have a right to send their child to a different school if they think their school has gotten too political. 80% across America, including, by the way, 80% of African American parents who support that same point of view. If this was about what the American people want, we'd have universal school choice everywhere already.
All right, so there you go. I found a lot of that interesting, right? Obviously, they're for school choice, so people like, oh, those people with school choice, they're going to show their statistics to skew it to what they want you to believe. But, I mean, the numbers are the numbers. And as the Congresswoman said, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. But it is a good story. The facts are the facts. And I think what happened, I was actually having a discussion with someone today, and they were wondering why, like, parents are starting to get in an uproar about all these different subjects that are going on in school. And I said, well, thank God COVID happened, because that gave an insight of what was happening inside of schools. And a lot of people didn't like it. And I think what's happening, the reason why it's 80% is because people look at their schools and they saw what happened with teachers union saying, don't open the schools. And we got to teach this and we're not teaching that. And there's schools that are lowering the bar, and you don't have to test for math anymore. You don't have to do this. There's whole school systems. I forget what city it is. Maybe it's Baltimore, where not one kid can read like a 4th grade level in high school. And you sit there and these schools are failing, and you have political figures that'll sit there and tell you it's more money, it's more this. No, what it really is to focus on what really matters, and what really matters is the student. And I think what happens is we're fighting against a teachers union who wants the status quo, and they want more money. And if you give us more money, we'll solve your problems. Well, I'll tell you what, they've been asking for that for years, and things are getting worse. And I think most people are realizing, well, hey, listen, if you give me my money back and I can go to this private school, my kid's going to get a better education. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize, if, hey, the government gave me my money back and I could put my kid in a school and there was a real school choice, that, you know, a lot of these political agendas, a lot of these things that don't matter to the education of your child would go away, and actually schools would start competing, because now they had to actually compete for dollars, right? They don't have to just sit there. We get paid no matter what, and we're gonna go there, and our teachers union every year we're gonna ask for more money. No, what they would be like, hey, you want to come and spend your dollars at our school because we're gonna provide you with a top-notch education. And I hope it gains steam. I'm sure there's a lot of states it's going to take a long time to happen, but I know there are states that are starting to pass laws that they're funding students, not schools. And I hope that keeps going, because I want schools, you know, to stay in business, but I also want them, I said business, right? I also want them to be more like a business and say, how do we get these children where they're supposed to be? Right? Get them to be productive citizens that actually can think critically and can actually do things that we require in the 21st century.
Justin, we just passed ballot question 1 here in Massachusetts. We're not going to have any funding issues related to schools ever again. We just passed graduated income taxes. It's going to go 100% to education and 0% anywhere else. So at least we're covered here in Massachusetts.
But if money solved the problems, we wouldn't have problems. And I tell you what, Massachusetts, I'm not going to lie, Massachusetts does have probably some of the best schools in America. But when you're the best of what, the 19th ranked schooling in the world, oh, that's like, oh, we're the best of mediocrity. I mean, that's where we're going to. Like, the United States used to be #1 in education. Now we're like number 19, and we keep slipping. But yay, we're the best of number 19. I mean, it blows my mind, and I think people are starting to realize that. And like I said, I think COVID-19 really exposed a lot of what's going on, and we need to get the politics out. We need to get everything out there. Like, I don't mind like teachers going in there and trying to teach kids to be critical and bringing things up. But if they're bringing up subjects and they're not letting kids be able to critically talk about it, or they're saying, listen, 1619 project is true. And I'm like, well, can we discuss this? Because it's not. Can we actually discuss the realities of what went on in history? Can we say math isn't racist? I mean, when the heck did math become racist? Right? So I think a lot of people are starting to look at schools different, because I think the assumption is, and it's horrible because this always happens, is everyone looks at things they've dealt with through their lens and their experience. So all of us that graduated school and high school, when we went through, we're like, hey, it wasn't that bad. I learned a lot. Well, that was 20 something years ago or more for me. And things have changed. And we have to recognize that they changed. And what we should do is, as I always tell my kids, like, things should get better. Kind of like we said with Earth Day, like, we should want things to be better. They're not better. They are not better. Study after study that's coming out is kids are so far behind. They don't know how to pay attention. They don't know how to do math. They don't know how to read. These are the people that are going to come up and take care of us when we're old. And I don't think everyone's sitting there looking at that. And I think we're heading for problems unless we fix this soon. And I think school choice might be a way to solve some of the issues we're having.
Even in my town, this is the lockdowns and the effect that it's had on kids is one of the number one issues that they're talking about, and how to get them back to the place where they were. And you actually touched upon another really interesting topic, where you have two parts to the school system. It's one, you have the content and the quality of the education, but then two, is it sustainable? And that might be a good topic for another show, because I think there's a lot of people that don't realize a lot of these school systems with the pensions and everything, they're not healthy financials behind a lot of these school systems. So there's going to be a lot of people who think that they have lifelong pensions that are going to find out in a few years that a lot of those pensions are underwater, and they're not going to be promised the full stream of income. So I think it's not only to make sure that the quality of the education is great, but also to make sure that they're on financially sound ground, to make sure that they're sustainable into the future as well.
All right. Well, that was in case you missed it. Those were like 4 things I thought like people would like to hear about, see a little bit about. Like I said, comment below or reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter, or the Justin Thurber Show, if you would like to like us to go more in depth on some of these issues. We'd love to. Like I said, we could probably spend 20-30 minutes on each one of these, but we just want to give you a quick overview. So what we're going to move on to next is the new mortgage rules that are going to penalize a borrower for being responsible. So you can check out this video, and then we can discuss a little bit. And I have an article. It's mind-blowing.
Welcome back. Now to changes in the mortgage industry. That could mean higher costs for home buyers with a good credit score and lower costs for those with a lower credit score. It's all because of a new federal rule. ABC's Andrew Dimbert has more.
It's a change many homeowners will find surprising. Beginning next month, some people with good credit scores may actually end up paying higher mortgage fees, while those with lower credit scores will pay less.
Because of these changes, the advantage of having a higher credit score or making a larger down payment is not as big as it used to be.
It's a new federal rule going into effect May 1st.
The change that the administration made is meant to make it easier for borrowers who have a lower credit score.
The goal is to boost affordable housing and provide more equitable access to homeownership.
The administration's stated purpose behind making these changes is to help make it easier for borrowers who have historically been disadvantaged and have had a hard time accessing credit.
First-time home buyers with credit scores ranging from 720 and 760, for example, could pay more under the new rule.
They could see an extra $2,600 on a mortgage of $350,000. It is real money, but not enough to break the bank.
Critics say the rule subsidizes homeowners who shouldn't be getting a mortgage in the first place.
It's another subsidy.
Experts say the biggest increases could be felt by those who put 15 to 20% down on a home.
You might choose to put down a somewhat smaller down payment, say 5% instead of 7%, and that might make a difference for you.
Oh my gosh. I got so much to say about that because this is one of my sticking points. You know, we're finance guys and think about these things, but the law of unintended consequences, and we talk about this a lot, and how politicians really aren't the brightest bulbs sometimes, and they don't do the long-term thinking. They want to do the nice, quick fix. We're going to do this. It's going to help people out. So one of the reasons why they're doing this is they want to get people that otherwise wouldn't have been able to get into the housing market, to give them a chance to get into the housing market. Well, the supply is tight. And now you have more people potentially entering the market. So if you have supply and demand, what's going to happen to the housing prices? Just like what happens with college when the federal government got involved by giving loans and extending credit to people. Did the colleges get cheaper? No, they went up. And my fear is what's going to happen is this is going to make the house prices increase. We'll read some of this article too, but another thing I was reading is the only really thing that's going to happen because of this is the government is going to make more money. That's really what's going to happen. So, hey, you have a better credit score. You have a bigger down payment. We charge you more and we make more money. It just blows my mind. And this is what we have to deal with. We have to deal with government trying to solve a problem and making it worse.
I'll bring up Thomas Sowell again. He's got a great quote for these types of programs. It's good intentions, terrible outcomes. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. It's like the people that it's supposed to help are going to be the people that are burnt the most by this, and the people that are looking to enter the housing market. I mean, look what we just had in the last couple of years. We had one of the biggest housing bubbles in the history of this country created by the government getting involved, bringing interest rates down low. So they made the cost of debt super cheap. Everyone, rushed into the housing market. And, now we're starting to see just created this huge distortion in the housing market, buying billions upon billions of dollars of mortgage-backed securities every month. And I think we talked about this too. The Fed owns close to a third of all mortgages. So has just completely distorted the housing market where, hey, it should actually be called, instead of affordable housing, I always joke about this, it should be, it's really makes housing unaffordable. So it's really the unaffordable housing trust that we have in these different towns. And anytime, just it goes back to basic principles. So free markets versus government regulation. Anytime government gets involved, they make things less affordable for everyone.
I wish people, that should be the saying, right? Anytime the government gets involved, things are going to get worse. So we have this article up, and I'm going to read a little bit, and we can discuss. It says, when the federal regulators of mortgage lending giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac announced an arcane schedule of new loan fees in January, few outside the industry paid attention. Once it became clear the new fees would penalize some borrowers with high credit scores and reward some with lower scores, the changes become embroiled in a political debate. It really should be a political debate. It should be like a common sense debate. After criticism, the new program punishes borrowers with high credit scores. Sandra Thompson, director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, defended the changes this week. Obviously, the hoops you have to go through, these people do to change the words around. to make it seem like they're actually helping you out, right? It's just crazy. So here we go. Higher credit score borrowers are not being charged more so that lower credit score borrowers can pay less, said Thompson in a statement. The updated fees, as was true of prior fees, generally increase as credit scores decrease for any given level of down payment, like a flat out misrepresentation of what's going on. So the story goes on. For example, if you have a credit score of 640 to 659 and borrow 75 to 80% of the home's value, right? So you make a 20 to 25% down payment, you now pay a fee equal to 2.25% of the loan balance, right? But the same borrower paid a 3% fee before the change. So you have a worse credit score, but your fees have gone down. Now, if you're a borrower with a high credit score of 740 to 759, you'd have paid a fee of 0.5% on a loan with an 80% whatever loan to value, right? It's an extra cost on a $350,000 loan of $1,313. So
That's a month, or I mean a year?
I think that's a year. That's a year. From what I heard, if you had bought, what I read, if you had bought a $400,000 house, these fees over a 30-year loan would cost you $14,000. So like $40 a month. And you're like, oh, it's only $14,000. Well, great. Thank you. I did everything to keep my credit score up. I didn't go to the restaurants. For some people, I quit smoking. I didn't buy the new car. I didn't do this. I saved up all my money. I lived in a crappy apartment to save up 20%, all for the honor over 30 years to pay $14,000 more because I put myself in a good place and it's sacrifice. Like I said, these are the things that you can't make this up. And again, I don't mind the government trying to help the less fortunate. But again, like I said earlier, which they don't think about is you help more people get into the market, especially people who aren't ready. All you do is you put a drain on supply, which makes prices go up. So it doesn't help anybody. It makes everything less affordable. But, don't let common sense get in your way. So I got this slide to show too about these new mortgage fees. So on the new fee schedule, if you were in the 640 to 659, credit range, your fees over the life would have been $7,875. And if you had good credit, it'd been $3,000, right? But now, no, that's under the new one. But before, if you had bad credit, you would have paid $10,000 in fees. And if you had good credit, you'd pay $1,750 in fees. And like I said, I understand people looking at that probably going like, well, that's a lot of money. And a person with a bad credit score, they're already starting from behind in a bad fiscal position. I would agree with you. But when you're making a house purchase, when you're making the most expensive purchase of your life, I think the government should be sitting there and telling people, listen, you're probably going to want to be financially set. You're probably going to want to learn how to budget money. You're probably going to want to learn how to use credit. You're probably going to want to learn how to save money. You're probably going to want to learn a lot of things because, like in 2008, things can change quick, and then you're in trouble and you're out, and homeless. It just blows my mind that people can't see that. Like people can't. All for equality too. That's what it really is. It's for equality. It's to make things equal. Well, it's not making things equal.
There was another boondoggle that the Federal Housing Administration just came out with. I'm gonna read that real quick too. It's the FHA announced that it is expanding and enhancing its set of loss mitigation options used to help borrowers struggling to make mortgage payments on their FHA insured mortgages. The loss mitigation options will be eligible to all borrowers who fall behind on their mortgage payments, regardless of the cause of their delinquency, according to a news release from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So not only are you going to get the benefit, but then if you default on the payment, you're not going to have to, you're not going to be considered delinquent on your mortgage anyway.
Well,
it's just going to be forbearance for life.
You know what? Sometimes I think about these things and we discuss things, and until you hear stuff, you really don't get what's going on. I understand what's happening now. Here, everyone out there, here's what's happening: job security. The FHA wants job security. We put people in who shouldn't be in houses. We make people who should be in houses pay more, and then those people become delinquent, and we take that money from the people who are paying more to help the people out that shouldn't have had it in the first place, and say, look, there was a need for us. we created the problem, and there's a need for us to fix it. I mean, it's so stupid. It blows my mind. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, everyone. It just blows my mind that, and again, these are unelected bureaucracies that our government sets up that actually affect our lives on a daily basis. And until we hold our elected officials responsible, they're going to keep on messing things up. And
that's a great point too, because the Federal Housing Authority, I don't know how many billions of dollars they're going to get, how many personnel that they take out of the federal budget, but you hit the nail right on the head. It's like their job as a government agency is to come up with new programs to help home buyers. So if they're not making up new programs, then how can they justify their own position? So it's like, even if it's not a good program, they're going to spit out new programs just to protect their own jobs.
Oh yeah. So I think we'll probably have to revisit that in the future to see what's happening. As you said, the article's already starting to come out that because actually it was supposedly supposed to start May 1st, tomorrow, but they've been implementing this since I think last October or maybe even August, that they've been implementing these fees and this structure. So I think time will tell, and we're probably, unfortunately, in the future going to have another show of how this has affected the housing market and how people are getting in trouble and getting underwater in houses again. So, all right. So then the final thing I want to discuss today is how the DNC has decided in their infinite wisdom that they're not going to hold any debates for the primary for, the Democratic candidates. So there's two right now, Kennedy and Williamson, and they said, nope, we're not going to allow a presidential debate. And here's my thing is I'm gonna play the video really quick, because actually it's actually pretty funny, because what's going to happen is if people watching on YouTube or people listen on the podcast, what you're seeing is all these articles that you find online. So if you type threat to democracy in Google or whatever search engine you use, you'll have countless headlines of how Republicans, MAGA extremists, they're a threat to democracy. And then what happens is all these people that care about democracy don't ever want to participate in the democratic process. And I'll tell you this, in some of the research for this, there's some chatter that Donald Trump, and we're going to get this, Donald Trump doesn't want to do debates either. And I'll tell you what, if he don't debate, I don't know what to tell you. I would say maybe look somewhere else, because to me, it's part of the process. If you think you're going to win and you think your ideas are better, go out and debate, right? I remember when I was running for office, we were trying to have a debate with my opponent, and people were telling me, Justin, don't do it. You're the newcomer, and the newcomer never wins. And I'm like, I don't care. And they're like, what do you mean you don't care? It wouldn't be a good idea. I say, listen, I believe that my ideas are better, and I can prove my ideas are better. And you know what? Bring it on. And if my ideas for some reason are better, well, I guess I learn. And as we said before about the battle of ideas, I just have to go out. It's incumbent upon me to go out, make my ideas better, make sure I can communicate those ideas. And then hopefully in the future, when I am in another debate, I'll be more prepared. But if you're going to sit there and say, hey, listen, I don't need to debate because I already won or I'm great. No, I don't accept that. Like I said, I'm going to hold everyone accountable. So like I said, Donald Trump would lose a lot with me if he wouldn't debate. So here's an article. And this was funny too, because I think a lot of people are starting to call the Democrats out on this. And I was trying to find a good article to sit there and to show like what's going on, but I want it to be fair. I think you and I both, Jim, want to kind of be as fair as possible. to both parties. And this article from Yahoo News about cancel the 2024 primary. Kari Lake says Trump already won, so no vote needed. And let me read a little bit, because again, here's the other thing. I think people also have to start learn how to be critical readers of anything they read, any news story, or when they watch a program on TV, a news program on TV, that they have to be critical of what's being told to them. So I'm gonna get to this article because let's hear what they have to say, because it's just so slanted a certain way, and it hides and obfuscates what's really going on. So Kari Lake wants to cancel next year Republican presidential primary. The primary is over, she proclaimed on Wednesday, tweeting the results of a Fox News poll that shows Donald Trump with a commanding lead over Ron DeSantis and other potential Republican opponents. It's time to rally around real Donald Trump. We must focus our energy on exposing that fool at Joe Biden, registering votes, and funding ballot chasing operations in swing states. We should not be wasting time and money fighting ourselves. And then the opinion piece, or the columnist, says, yeah, who needs democracy? Right? But here's the thing is, they say she don't need it, but then watch the tone of when they talk about how Joe Biden doesn't have to debate. Right? So apparently not Lake, who is busy currying favor with Trump, that she's willing to throw away your right to have a voice in who will be the Republican nominee in 2024. Well, with Joe Biden's entry in this week's 2024 race, the Democratic National Committee has said it has no plans to hold presidential primary debates. Next year, Biden has declared that he's good to run the country until he's 86, so no other Democrats need apply, right? A new poll shows only 52% of Democrats don't want him to run again. So that's it. No debates for Democrat voters who might want to size up potential alternatives to re-electing a guy who is already the oldest president in American history. Where's the this is a threat to democracy? And again, this is like, can't we be fair and balanced? That's what we try doing here. We try being fair and balanced. Like, I want Trump to debate. I want Biden to debate. And, you might not be a fan of the people, like people might not be a fan of Williamson. People might not be a fan of Kennedy, right? But they should be heard. I think everyone should be heard. So what I did is I actually went online and I found a clip of CNN had a really good clip of Kennedy talking. And he actually says it way better than I can. And it's great to hear from a Democrat, because I think a lot of people, if they close their eyes and said, is this a conservative or a Democrat with what he's about to say, they'd be like, oh, he's a conservative. But I think what it really is it's actually not a conservative, a Democrat issue. I know we're not a democracy. Everyone's going to say we're a republic. We're not a democracy, right? I understand that, but for all intents and purposes, I think we have a democratic process, and that's what he's talking about. So let's take a listen, and we can discuss. Sound good?
I am not going to run a mean-spirited campaign or a personal campaign against President Biden. He and I just differ really dramatically on issues like the war, like censorship, like the control of Wall Street and the big corporations of our federal government, and the pharmaceutical companies, and also the use of fear as a governing tool. And I think our country's headed in a bad direction, and that's why I'm running.
I've just seen a poll that says you're at 19% among Democrats in a race against President Biden. At what point do you think he's obligated to debate you? I'm mindful of the fact that if it were a general election, the Commission on Presidential Debates has a threshold of 15%.
I mean, I think there should be debates. I think, particularly, Michael, at this time in history, there's so many Americans who are worried about election integrity, who have lost faith in election integrity and feel like the whole system, including the election system, is rigged against them. I mean, there was riots by people on Capitol Hill because of that, that driving conviction. So I think the political parties, both parties, ought to be doing everything that they can to convince the American public that we really have a democracy in this country and that, our politicians are running, are talking to people, are doing retail politics, are engaging in debates and town halls, and it's not just a rigged system where the candidates are chosen by the political party that was done in the Soviet Union. So I'm hoping, even if I had 5%, I think it's important to do debates.
Would you go so far as to say that he has an obligation to debate you if you have a respectable showing in the polls and 19% is respectable?
I think he has an obligation to democracy to debate anyway. And I would hope that he does that. But I mean, you're a lawyer and I'm a lawyer. There's no legal obligation that the president has. I can't sue him for it. It's a decision by the party. And I would hope that the party would put democracy, would treasure and value our democracy. And it would at least, I think a lot of people are feeling like, the shroud has been lifted off of democracy now, and that, it's all kind of fake and it was all rigged. And I think we need to be doing everything that we can to persuade Americans that democracy in this country is real.
Wow. Right? Like, wow. And again, I think this is why they don't want to have the debate. Like, really quick, I just wrote some things down when he was talking, right? He's like, war, censorship that he differs with Biden on, fear as a tool that they use to control us, right? And he said we have to convince people we have a democracy and that the system isn't rigged. And at the end, he's like, the shroud has been lifted and people are starting to see that it's not what we think it is. And we've discussed that. Like, you and I have discussed this when we sit there and we talk about how we vote for people and we expect them to go up and be our representative. And then when we were talking about the accountability with the state auditor in Massachusetts, and they had that lady talking about how 2 or 3 people in all of Massachusetts are making the laws for everybody. Well, that's not how it's supposed to work. And then a couple episodes later, when we were discussing at a national level, how a lot of our laws in blue states are starting to sync up together. And that smells to me that what's happening is, even at a national level, marching orders are coming down. So it's even worse than we thought. Instead of 2 or 3 people at state level making decisions for the state, it's national people telling state level people that this is what you're going to do because this is the way the party's going to go. And everyone that sits there and votes and doesn't hold their elected officials accountable, they're getting nothing. They're getting nothing but an illusion that they have a say. And again, I think this is why, one of the big reasons why they don't want Kennedy out there. They don't want people challenging Biden in the primary, because what they want to do is they want to control the narrative. They want to say, hey, your vote works. We want him. There's no need for this guy to sit here and tell you everything. That probably open your eyes to the fact that you don't have a choice. We make the choices for you. And again, harkens back to Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, right? Bernie Sanders was ahead of everything, and DNC's like, yeah, we're going Hillary because we don't care about what you say.
They learned their lesson from when Obama beat Hillary, when Obama came through the ranks and beat her. But yeah, I'm glad that they put the percentages there too, because we're not talking about anyone that signs up to run for president. You're going to have to debate them. It's a pretty high threshold. We're talking, I think it's usually like 15%.
Yep.
And that's something that I would agree with. So anyone that's getting 15% or more of the vote would be someone who would be eligible to debate. And I think that would be a great, benchmark, a great threshold, and a great idea. Is like, I agree 100%, is that on both parties, it's like we shouldn't be canceling debates, especially at this time. And he dropped a lot of truth bombs I think a lot of people don't want to hear, but it's 100% true. It's the politics in both parties have become this top-down approach where it's the people at the top kind of dictating everything down, like you said, from the federal level to the state level to the town level, etc. And the movement we're talking about on either party, doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican, is we need to flip that spectrum. It needs to be a grassroots up movement where
Yes.
the people at the top are listening to the people at the bottom, not the other way around.
Well, the other thing too is we started this, right? It's kind of funny because we're talking about how there's going to be no, well, as of right now, no debate in the primary, but we started with the threat to democracy, and if you went on and typed threat to democracy, and the reason why we said that is because a lot of politicians on both sides, but especially on the Democratic side, especially Biden lately, sitting there and constantly like extreme MAGA Republicans are a threat to democracy, and all these threats to democracy. It's only when it's convenient for them, because I think the democratic process, like I said, we're a constitutional republic. I understand it, but there is a democratic process, and part of the democratic process should be debates, free, fair, open debates, so people can hear things, be heard, and maybe enact some sort of change. So when I was doing my research from this, I actually found I searched, what's the definition of a threat to democracy, and I found this one, and it's probably not the official threat, but I thought it was really, really good. So let me read it. A threat to democracy is anything that reduces the effectiveness of the people's control over how their country is run. Normally, such a threat takes the form of strengthening the political control exercised by a concentrated center of power, such as the wealthy or financial class. Those threats will shift the balance of power in government decisions towards policies specifically in favor of special interests at the expense of all others. What this shows to me is you have President Biden and you have all these people saying it's a threat to democracy, as they coalesce control, as they take it away from people. It's kind of funny. It's kind of a neat trick what they do, right? What we talk about. Hey, listen, it's a threat to democracy, so give us more power. No. The threat to democracy is anything that reduces the effectiveness of the people's control over how their country is run. So by you taking more control, you're the threat to democracy. And that's the thing, is we flipped the script, and what we really need is people to start understanding this and working towards flipping it back right. We need this country to get back where people understand how things are supposed to work, and that if someone says threat to democracy, that they're using it in the right context and not just using it to fearmonger against their political adversaries. They're a threat to democracy, so vote for us and give us more power. No, that's not how it goes.
And the crazy thing about this whole setup is it's like a very thin shell company, where it's like you have these people at the top and there's this lining of politicians that are controlling everything. And there's a system. It's the systems and the process in place. So it's like you have the establishment Republican Party and the establishment Democrat Party, and they're the ones that are with their resources are able to kind of control things the way that they want.
Yes.
But the second that there is a legitimate grassroots movement, both of those shells are going to come shattering down. And I think that's what we're trying to build here in Massachusetts. Is we're trying to build a group of people to get involved at all levels. And we'll find is like once we start pushing back on a lot of this stuff, there's not really much resistance against it, because all it was a psychology thing for a psychology to begin with.
What I hope more people see is by like Kennedy being in this, and again, would I vote for him? No, but would I support him now? Yes, I support anyone that wants to have the democratic process. But what I think more and more people need to see is that there's an illusion of a democratic process, and that illusion needs to be dismantled. It needs to be taken care of, and people actually need to have an actual democratic process. They need to actually see that when they go to vote, it means something. When they say, hey, listen, we elected you as a representative to represent us, you're going to go there and represent us. Not you're going to go there and someone at national level is going to tell state level what to do, and you get nothing done. And I hope that changes. It's coming. And I think like I said, I think what's happening by shows like this, by a lot of people being energized, I know people ask you all the time, like they ask me, like, well, Justin, what can we do? And my answer to them is nothing isn't an option. So, like, whatever you can do. I had a buddy of mine reach out to me this week. He is starting to email representatives. Good. Go to selectmen meetings. Go to your school committee meetings. Support candidates that you want to see, either money, time. Talk to people about stuff. Show them shows like this. Do something. Don't just sit there and like, I can't change it. You can, because as you and I have discussed before, is they don't like sunlight, and sunlight is the best disinfectant on these guys. They don't want this out. They spend so much money to hide this stuff. And all we need to do is shine a light on it and hold them accountable.
Voting is just one way to get involved. Join an RTC. Attend your local town committee meetings.
Yeah.
Run for a town committee seat. Run for a state committee seat. Run for a state rep seat. You know, it's like there's all these ways that you can get involved just beyond voting. At this point, it's like if you're just voting, you need to be doing more.
Well, one last thing before we end the show is something you and I discuss all the time, and it's kind of bothersome. It's bothersome to me because I think, unfortunately, it might be the mentality of a lot of conservatives. Is, you know, conservatives are independent. They want to be left alone. And I think because we're wired that way, I think a lot of them really want Trump to win because they think Trump will do all the work and they can just go back to doing whatever they're doing and living their life. That's not going to happen. Let's be honest, that's not going to happen. Even if Trump wins, we have to do the work. We can't let other people do all the work for us. And until we realize that as a party, until we realize that as conservatives, we're going to get trounced all the time because, unfortunately, our opposition, like I said earlier, they know how to circle the wagons. They come together because the only thing that matters to them is getting their way. And they don't care how they get it. And then we sit here, we're like, well, you know, I'm an individual. Just leave me alone. I just want this. And all I want is I want you to fix it. I want Trump to fix it or DeSantis to fix it. And then I can just go do what the hell I want to do. And that it doesn't work anymore. We're gonna have to get energized. We're gonna have to get off our butts and actually do stuff. And it's not gonna be fixed in a week. It's not gonna be fixed in a month. It's not gonna be fixed if Donald Trump wins. It's not gonna get fixed if Donald Trump wins. Then Ron DeSantis wins 8 years. It's not gonna get fixed. What it's gonna take is it's gonna take a constant effort of people working together to take this country back.
Just like our founding fathers did in 1776, baby.
Yeah, you know it. Well, again, Jim, I appreciate it. We have a lot of discussions. We appreciate everyone that listens and watches. If you have any comments or suggestions for future shows, you know, just leave a comment. Like I said, I have the Justin Thurber Show on Twitter. Obviously, you can leave comments on YouTube. We have the Facebook page. And, you know, just reach out to us. And we appreciate you being here and listening. And anything to say before we go, Jim?
No, just thanks for having me.
All right, anytime. You know it. So peace out, everyone. Have a wonderful day.